In the third day of the aggression, my family house got destroyed while we were sleeping inside our home without any prior warning missiles or any call from IDF. At that moment, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine that I survived and I'm still alive.
You are listening to Gaza Voices, a place to connect to the real, lived experiences of Gazans on the ground following the events of October 7th, 2023. This show is a collaboration between Palestinians and allies around the world. We aim to amplify the voices of people impacted by the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza at this moment in history, and to underline the personal cost of survival under siege. In our last episode, we heard from Omar al-Arabi, a 26-year-old from Gaza City who shared the harrowing first moments and subsequent days following the attacks that began on October 7th. Omar detailed the profound changes and challenges faced by the residents of Gaza, the loss of friends and family, and the dire shortages of food, water, and electricity. As he recounted the physical and emotional damage, we were given a glimpse into the resilience and suffering of those living through unimaginable events. Today, we continue to explore these stories to better understand the conditions of people in Gaza. My name is Sen Chan. I'm one of the narrators for this podcast. You'll hear me and the voices of Palestinians and diverse allies as we bring in additional information over the course of this show to support the context of these voices from Gaza. Today, we meet Hala Redwan, a young Gazan woman from Shati Refugee Camp within Gaza City, one of the most populated areas in western Gaza. Before the war, it was home to more than 90,000 residents. After multiple internal evacuations within the Gaza Strip and months of turmoil, Hala now resides in Egypt, carrying with her the traumatic yet inspiring tales of survival and resistance from Gaza. She brings an important perspective on the toll of war on women. In particular, how women are forced to navigate menstruation, pregnancy, and lactation under devastating circumstances. This interview was conducted by Ala Antar and Alison Payer on January 17, 2024. The quality of the recording is poor in some moments of this interview, as Hala's internet connection is precarious. Hala is close with her family and friends, and before October 7th, enjoyed a career as a pharmacist. She had just been hired as a project coordinator and assistant for sexual and reproductive health at the Palestinian Medical Relief Society, a non-governmental organization providing emergency and primary healthcare to communities in Gaza and the West Bank.
I'm from Gaza City. That's located in Gaza Strip. Gaza City, it's a place in the north of Wadi Gaza. We are a defenseless civilian, actually. If you know us well, Ala know us as a family, and he know that my father is a retired man, and I'm a pharmacist. I worked with Ala before, and I'm a pharmacist, and I was in Berlin, Germany by March 2023 to represent my home country, Palestine, and to speak up on behalf of every Palestinian woman. Actually, I got a new job, like life is smiling to you. That was happened to me.
Hala's daily life was interrupted when a mosque located near her home was bombed in an airstrike by the IDF.
In the third day of the aggression, my family house got destroyed while we were sleeping inside our home without any prior warning missiles or any call from IDF. And at that moment, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine that I survived and I'm still alive. They bombed the mosque in front of my house, and all of my family were sleeping at that moment. I was in the room in front of the mosque, and I was alone in that room. I was there for 30 minutes or more than 45 minutes alone without nobody hearing about me under the rubble. I was yelling at that moment and screaming if someone can hear me or know I'm still alive or not. When I remember that, it's getting too heavy inside, and it's really painful because I went through a severe apnea when my breath is stopped. My breath is stopping at that moment. I can't take my breath anyway. At that moment, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine that I survived and I'm still alive. And I remember when the rescue team tried their best to save my life. And I remember when somebody in the rescue team just told me, in Islamic religion, we have something called shahadu, say something religious, that you will pass away and it's your last minutes in this life. After that, I went to a Shifa hospital. In the hospital, they treat me well. I remember that nobody from my immediate family was with me. I was alone with no phone because I lost my personal phone during this camping. And I remember that I asked everybody in the hospital, I asked them, just call my father. I know that my father is okay, and I saw them, but I couldn't find anybody, and I don't know what I should do and what I can do. My situation was really bad, and they gave me the oxygen bottle and did something to check me up if everything is fine or not. I got many injuries in my body, but Alhamdulillah, I'm getting better. Alhamdulillah, everything is fine because I'm still alive. I was asking them to call my father to rest assured that they are okay and what I supposed to do, where we're supposed to go after getting out of the hospital. Alhamdulillah, everything was okay. That I'm still okay physically, but I'm emotionally destroyed. I remember that I got a lot of hallucinations at that moment, many nightmares in the night.
A brief trigger warning. The following minute and a half of audio from news channels contains content that some listeners may find upsetting or disturbing.
In this building behind me, this is a 3-story building that has been targeted, and another house here and another house here. According to the family, he told me that 5 of his family members are still under the rubble.
A 15-year-old Palestinian girl has been rescued after spending 3 days under the rubble of her home in Khan Yunis. The Israeli military targeted the residential complex where her family was seeking shelter. 6 of her relatives were killed, including her parents and sister.
Palestinians dig for survivors with their bare hands. And then, there, in the rubble, a child is found, just 10 months old, named Tala. She's covered by a mattress, unconscious, but breathing. They chant, "She's alive, she's alive."
You can't hear yourself think. It's not just the noise of the sirens and the strikes. The sound of the chaos in between is just relentless. This little boy was pulled out alive, his face blackened. His rescuer rushes to his mother. But before she can embrace her boy, she passes out in a shock.
This was a compilation of news footage from Al Jazeera, NBC, and Channel 4. Hala's harrowing experience and the loss of her home is part of a broader story of destruction. By early April 2024, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East estimated that 62% of all homes in Gaza have been destroyed. Additionally, in January 2024, Gaza's Tourism and Antiquities Ministry stated an estimation of the damage or destruction of over 100 mosques across the region. Hala survived the bombing, but it was the start of a difficult journey. On October 13th, 2023, she and approximately 1.1 million civilians in northern Gaza were ordered by the IDF to evacuate to the south in just 24 hours. Experts from the United Nations Commission on Human Rights called the evacuation order a crime against humanity and a blatant violation of international humanitarian law, warning that the displacement would have devastating humanitarian consequences. Over the next days, Hala and her family would experience multiple displacements, each requiring them to evacuate with the sick, elderly, and eventually even a newborn.
We went to the south because we couldn't fear the situation in the north, as we evacuated 7 times in the north. Yeah, just in 3 days, we evacuated 7th time. Just imagine that. We couldn't bear that. We couldn't endure this ongoing attacks on Gaza. Then we evacuated to my sister homes in Al Mukhabarat. Then they got a call from IDF to evacuate and to leave, to flee, just flee and leave their house. And we evacuated to the dental clinic at that time. And then by the morning, we evacuated to our uncle's house in Mal'ab, Palestine, Palestine stadium, yes. And then my uncle's neighbor got a call from IDF to evacuate the area. And then we went to our relative's house. And then we evacuated again to the school that's located in Al Shati. And after bearing all of these evacuation, we decided to leave Gaza and to flee. Just we can't bear that. It was unbearable, unimaginable to endure. Yeah, it was terrific time. And I remember that I couldn't be under the fire with all of these people around me, and there with public bathroom, and there is no water, no clean water, no running water. And I decided with my sister and my mom to evacuate to the south where my auntie house. So my dad and my brother and my uncles decided to just be stayed at the north, and we were in the south. At that moment, my sister Saja was with her husband's family in the north as well. And my dad really was worried about us because he told me that they will just separate the north from the south. And Hala, are you sure that you will just leave us alone? And if something happened to us, if they separate us, we wouldn't know anything about us. I remember that it was a tough decision to take, but I handled a lot of mental issues at that moment. As I told you, I got a lot of hallucinations after experience this painful bombardment of my house while I'm still under the rubble. And after this endless evacuation time, so we decided to go to the south. My dad and my brother were in Gaza in the north. My sister were in the north, and we were in the south. We were the first people going to the south. My mom, two of my sister, and I. We went to the south before the rest of my family. And I remember very well that I was like worried all the time. I don't know if they're gonna still okay or not, because there's no safe place in Gaza. Everywhere is target, and you couldn't find any safe place in Gaza. But the situation in North is really terrible and horrific. But after the situation is getting worse and worse, and after the IDF calls and bombing of Gaza and the ongoing airstrikes and warplanes, my family decided to join us. They came from north to the south on their foot. on their feet. Yani, just imagine that there is no car, there is no any mode of transportation to just evacuate you from north to the south. They came on their foot, and it was in the summer. Like it was in the first week of the aggression, like the middle of October. We still the climate was hot and sunny at that moment, and they have to hold their essential resources of bags and documentary issues and so on.
In the midst of the chaos, the IDF established what they called a safe passage along Salahuddin Street, one of the two main arteries connecting the north and south of Gaza. This corridor was meant to facilitate the evacuation of civilians from areas under heavy bombardment. Civilians, including Hala's father and brother, were forced to embark on a 3-kilometer journey on foot, a walk that could last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on one's pace and physical condition. However, the reality of this passage was far from safe. In the early days of the evacuation route's opening, a convoy was bombed, reportedly killing 70 people. Moreover, many eyewitness reports exist of soldiers at IDF checkpoints taking basic belongings from people, including bags of clothing, separating people from their families, arresting them, and even executing them in the street. While a large majority of northern Gazans evacuated south, some decided to stay. Their reasons vary from political will to resist a second Nakba, as some call it, referencing the forced displacement of 750,000 Palestinians during the 1947 to 1949 conflict, to being or supporting family who are too sick, elderly, or infirm to move the distance under the severe conditions of war.
No words can describe how horrific the situation there. I know that the South didn't compare with the North, but we still all under the same fire. We still all living the same humanitarian crisis, with nobody knowing about us, with no call for an immediate ceasefire, with the same drones and military activities and military invasion, of course. After that second, they joined us in the South. This was like a happiest moment for us, because if we will pass away, we will pass away together. We will be killed together. No one will be survived without other. So this was a happiest moment for other to be gathered again and under the same place.
We learned from Omar al-Aghabi in episode 1 that many Gazans lost access to electricity and internet on the first days of the siege as a result of the destruction of infrastructure. These shortages are paralleled in Hala's story, as she describes the distress of not being able to contact loved ones to assure their safety.
I must to tell you something. They cut down the internet and the cellular service from time to time for several days in Gaza, and we didn't have any access to the internet and cellular data. We couldn't just call our immediate or extended family to be reassured if they're still alive, if they're okay or not, if their house or if the place they were evacuated to is still okay, or if it got pampered or it got destroyed. So it was like difficult to reach them out and to know anything about them, because I remember very well that I tried to call my uncle. He was in Al Maghazi in the south, and we were in Deir al Balah city. And I remember that I tried to call them like 70 times. Can you imagine? And in the 75 tries, I got his answer. Yeah, he responded to me. Just imagine how it's difficult to reach your immediate family and to be reassured if they are still alive or if they passed away.
Both Hala and Omar describe the arduous process of sourcing water and how the beginnings of food scarcity began showing through massively inflated prices and the lack of supplies from vendors.
My routine was how to find flour, how to pick it, how to find clean water somehow. It's not clean. I remember very well that we drank uncleaned water for 1 month. Yeah, uncleaned. It was uncleaned water. I remember that. Half of it was uncleaned and half of it was pure. And just imagine how the situation is really bad there. We didn't have an access for pure water. And in Gaza, there's no food. And if you're, let's say, if you're rich enough, you will afford the cost of food. Can you imagine that the flour that's used in baking bread costs like $300? Can you imagine? And that lasts for it will the bread will last like for, I don't know, if you have a big family, it will last for 1 week or 2 weeks. And if you know the situation in Gaza, you will know that there is no salaries in Gaza. They cut the salaries, they even cut the salaries. And if you are working at a private sector, you already lost your job, as I did. I lost my job. Once I remember that it's really heavy that you witness all of these struggles and you're still alive. You're okay. You're physically okay, but you're mentally and emotionally not okay.
According to Amnesty International, 90 to 95% of the water supply in Gaza is contaminated and unfit for human consumption. Gaza's only fresh water source, the coastal aquifer, is insufficient for the needs of the population and is being increasingly depleted by over-extraction and contaminated by sewage and seawater infiltration. The World Health Organization recommends a daily minimum of 100 liters of clean water per person, and the United Nations names an emergency standard of 15 liters per person per day. Palestinians in the West Bank consume on average 82 liters of water a day, while the UN estimates that the average Gazan is surviving on only 3 liters of water per day for all needs, including drinking, bathing, and cleaning. The resulting disparity in access to water between Israelis and Palestinians is truly staggering, with average per capita Israeli consumption between 240 to 300 liters of water a day, at least 3 times the amount of Palestinians living in the West Bank, and up to 10 times that of Gazans. But Hala brings our attention to a further complication from stringent access to water, one that particularly affects women. With nearly 1 million women and girls displaced in Gaza, privacy and access to basic menstrual hygiene products have become nearly unattainable for most. It has been widely reported that women and girls have resorted to using makeshift materials, such as tent pieces and clothing, as sanitary pads.
We are all girls, and you know that female stuff that we got a monthly period, and that's stuff, and that we have to go to the place where we can find a private bathroom to go where and to handle these stuff. As I told you, I'm a pharmacist. I was thinking to just take a pill to stop my period for a while, because really literally the situation there is really bad. There is no pads for women. You couldn't find analgesic painkiller to handle this stuff. You couldn't find water, just running water to wash yourself. So it was like, yeah, I couldn't appear that in public bathroom without running water, with everyone seeing you and seeing your pain. Like when you just experience this pain alongside everybody. Imagine that pregnant woman just give her birth like a few minutes ago, and she's supposed to shower herself and to shower her baby and to go to the bathroom from time to time and to have hot water. And we can't find this like enjoyable moment.
And just as almost everything is in short supply in Gaza, women can't find sanitary products during their menstrual cycle.
من أكتر الصعوبات اللي بتواجهها.
There are no sanitary towels available anymore, so we used nappies as an alternative when we could find them. We also used tissues, but now it's extremely difficult because even these options aren't available. It is very difficult.
Amid the stress and trauma caused by bombardment and displacement throughout their pregnancies, Palestinian women are deprived of proper medical care and routine checkups, which is particularly dangerous for women in their final 3 months of pregnancy. And newborns are not given the necessary vaccinations as they are unavailable in Gaza. Furthermore, pregnant and lactating mothers lack access to the nutritious and healthy diet they need. It is estimated that in Gaza, 155,000 women are either pregnant or lactating, and 135,000 babies are under 2 years old.
We are here in Deir al-Balah camp, and today we visited a pregnant female from the Gaza Strip called Sujud Hussam.
الظروف عن جد كتير صعبة.
Conditions are really hard. Being pregnant, sharing a single mattress with my husband, water drips down on us. I was 7 months pregnant. Yesterday, I began the 9th month. I have nothing prepared for the baby. No diapers, no clothes. Once I deliver the baby, I hope many good people will help.
And this is the healthcare system on the back of 16 years of a blockade. It's crippled, it's under attack and on the brink of collapse. These pregnant women have nowhere to go and they're facing unthinkable challenges. Our team is obviously, as part of the UN team, on the ground and trying to support as much as possible. But the stories we hear from testimonies from Gazan pregnant women gathered in the last few days are really shocking, very shocking. One pregnant woman said, and I would like to quote her, "I couldn't help but think how my baby was feeling with every explosion."
The news footage you have just heard on menstruation and women's health was from Al Jazeera. Despite narrowly escaping death under the rubble and having survived multiple displacements, Hala still found ways to educate others. She leaned into her professional training as a pharmacist to support those around her, with a special focus for women on topics of hygiene and healthcare, an issue of vital importance under siege. You'll hear next from Ala Antar on our interview team with Hala.
I have a small question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I remember, you made during the war like awareness sessions about transferable diseases and about hygiene and about self-care for women and girls in the tents and in the
Yes.
the compounds. Can you explain more what you did there? And the second question actually I have is, did you aware also about the transferable diseases that maybe the woman or the girl will get when she use like another's clothes or when she treat herself in not a proper way? Like we know that maybe the majority of the girls in Gaza right now are not treating themselves in a good way or in the proper way.
During our awareness session to women and children about hygiene and about personal hygiene and personal health and lifestyle, we experienced a lot of cases that suffered from new diseases like chickenpox, hepatitis, and other contagious diseases. Even though we were in winter and that there is some viruses, especially in winter, like influenza virus, and the new species and let's say the new viruses of coronavirus, as that we receive a lot of cases upon that, and we try our best just to treat them well, as we were in the focal point of medical staff to treat people. And we have many volunteers from medical fields, from medicine, pharmacy, nursing, etc. So we were medical staff, and we try our best just to smooth their life during sheltering. But when this case is coming more severe and severe, you couldn't do anything with it because there is no proper health services for them or treatment. As you know that we have like a deficiency in medicine in Gaza, like pharmacies are running out of medicines and the drugs. And if you go to ask pharmacists in pharmacies or any clinics that's supposed to offer drugs for community or for people, they gonna tell you that we are short of medicines and the drugs, and we don't have any type of analgesic or any type of antibiotic and even antiviral. And you know that really the situation was really bad in shelters, in tents, and in school, as the diseases is becoming more contagious time by time. And you witness that largest number of people who evacuated and who sheltered in schools and in universities with their only clothes on their bodies, without other clothes. And if they lucky enough, they will have a used clothes from anybody who donated with their clothes. This was like, okay, it's a way of a charity, but it's also a way of transferring diseases, and it's like a way of viruses and diseases. They don't have a proper medicine, they don't have like a proper coverage blankets or as access to running water or bathroom. So if you will stay in that tent or in that school for a long period, and if you didn't witness this kind of disease at the first moment, you're gonna face it again if you were for like a long period, because as I told you that it's contagious and it's spread in short time. And even within children themselves, they couldn't do anything with that. All we can do is aware them enough how they can just clean their clothes and to go and to save their hygiene and personal health as much as they could. But I know that it's nothing compared what we're facing right now, without any proper access to healthcare services, without any proper access to medicine, to drugs, and even the life resources of water and gases itself. That we were supposed to do actually, to be the focal point of medical stuff and to treat them as much as we can with like a very small product.
Regarding to your work, it's a bit of sensitive question. How did the girls in Gaza or the women in Gaza managed to wash themselves, treat themselves like fine in a good way or in a proper way?
Actually, throughout my residence in the south, I saw how women in school and shelters, how they just treated themselves well. They go to the sea, Gaza Sea, to just to clean their clothes and to just to clean themselves by swimming in the sea. And you know that it's really risky to go there, as the rockets can be done from the seaport. But they have no, like, they have nothing to do other than going to the sea and clean their clothes and clean themselves as well. So just imagine that, how it's really painful on women to handle this stuff of maternal and, let's see, womanhood stuff. Like they couldn't do anything without, and really there's no flash on that area of the women who suffered during the war, and how they shower themselves and how they clean the clothes without running water, or how they just stay in the sea to treat this stuff. So certainly the toughest thing women can handle and can suffer.
The scars of war are not only physical, but deeply emotional. Hala, like many others in Gaza, carries the weight of trauma from her harrowing experiences. She elaborates on her thoughts as she passes from moment to moment through the crisis and what she found most difficult to bear.
What was your thoughts every day in the war, from the first day of the war till the day you finally get out from Gaza?
my thoughts during that will survive this war or not, if I will survive the next minute or not, because every single minute matters in Gaza. If you will survive or get killed, if you will be in the list of injured people, or the list of severe injured people, or the list of martyrs. So every single minute really matters in Gaza. You know what? From the first day of this aggression, I wasn't thought that it will last for more than 100 days. I thought it will be for like week, 2 weeks maximum, and then everything will come back to its normal and original state. But the situation was getting worse and worse day by day, with nobody knowing about us. You know what? When my family house got destroyed, and when I got injured, and my sister and my uncles got injured, I told to myself that why they are doing that to us. We are a defenseless civilian, actually. I remember that I got a lot of hallucinations, many nightmares in the nights, even after evacuating and even after leaving Gaza to the safe place. I'm currently living in Egypt. Even that, I'm still handle a lot of nightmares in nights. I got a lot of daydreams and nightmares about that. I'm still under the rubble and nobody knowing I'm here and I will be killed any moment. This is the most horrific time when I remember that, because you literally survived, but you still traumatized. You know what? I just recognized that every Palestinian will be traumatized till the death. Even I'm not in the PTSD issue or not. I'm still in that trauma that will last me till the death. I know that because I had a very painful story. Every Gazan had a very painful story with nobody knowing about what we are living, what we're supposed to live, and to suffer every single day in that aggression.
Hala's experience of repeated exposure to trauma is one that is shared by the majority of Gazans. A 2020 study of Gazan youth between 11 to 17 years old found that nearly 54% of the participants fit the diagnosis criteria for PTSD, while a 2021 study found that every single participant from Gaza had been exposed to more than 20 traumatic events between 2006 to 2018. For reference, a 2020 study of prevalence of potentially traumatic events cites that across a broad range of countries, around 2/3 of people are exposed to traumatic events, but only 1/3 are exposed to 4 or more such events. Furthermore, PTSD prevalence is under 10% across countries with less recent conflict and as high as 37% in post-conflict countries. The experience of Gazans is, as a whole, far out of balance with the entire rest of the world. Since Hamas came to power in 2007, Israel has imposed an indefinite blockade on Gaza with only 3 entry points, 2 controlled by Israel and 1 controlled by Egypt, which helps to uphold the restrictions. At the time of this recording, Israel controls the Palestinian side of the southern Rafah crossing. Movement in and out of the region is heavily regulated through the traveler list, which is jointly managed by the Egyptian Authority, Palestinian Authority, and Israel. Eligibility is determined by a variety of factors: medical necessity, Egyptian kinship, residency, and dual nationality have all been listed in an international evacuation initiative. Being added to the travelers list to cross into Egypt comes at a cost. Coordination fees for brokers can be in the range of 5,000 to 10,000 euros per person. The conditions of this blockade have been described by human rights organizations as collective punishment, an act prohibited by the Fourth Geneva Convention, which many say has turned Gaza into a de facto open-air prison. With the ongoing war, many Gazans, including Hala, seek a way out of Gaza to Egypt. Given the uncertainty of navigating the traveler list and the expenses involved in leaving, as detailed by Omar in episode 1 of this series, not everyone is able to get out of harm's way.
I remember when our names was, we didn't know about it because we have no internet and no calls. After that, we received from, he told him just Egypt and your family's name was listed in traveler list. Just get ready for that. And at that moment, all we were thinking about how we can reach Rafah city and Rafah border, how we can reach it in a good and better
In a safe way.
situation. Yeah, in a safe way. I remember that we got a deal from a driver to just evacuate us from Deir al-Balah to Rafah border. There's no way other than this way to go to Rafah. And we choose that way. And then, alhamdulillah, we're in Egypt. We are in a safe place. But we didn't know what we should do because we already lost our home and we already lost our jobs. And even if you have little amount of money, it will be ended soon. What we will do after that? I'm trying to find a scholarship or a job, anything, but I couldn't find that because I don't have an official document here in Egypt. And I just want to go outside and asking for visa permit or work visa permit or like immigration permit. It will cost me a lot. So I didn't decide it until this moment what I supposed to do. If I will be stuck in Egypt, if I will go back to my home country and my home city, Gaza.
The entire population of 2.3 million people in Gaza are entangled in a web of complex border crossing requirements, whether for medical aid, to reunite with relatives who have managed to evacuate, or to seek work and education. Today, at the border with Egypt, the announcement of one's name as cleared for crossing can mean basic survival. Those not called must wait, perhaps for the funds to secure passage or to be deemed an urgent case. After leaving Gaza, Hala reflects on the horizons of her uncertain future in the shadow of a war that has ravaged her home and the peril that her remaining family there still faces. Interviewer Allison checks in.
I'm talking about my niece Tia. What I supposed to do when she just heard the sounds of airplanes, rocket, and the drones all the time. And I was worried about her. I was worried that she's gonna live in this chaotic and injustice world. And she's just 2 months old. She deserves better life, better country to go and to complete her education and her profession there. As my sister and my brother is still so young, my sister have to complete her secondary school, and my brother, sorry, has to complete her secondary school, and my sister Shahid has to complete her university studies, undergraduate studies. We decided on that decision because we thought it's gonna take a lot of time, efforts, and yeah, Gaza won't rebuild again in very short time. Everything is gloomy and blue, and once you survived it and you're right now in Cairo, Egypt, but you're still stuck with Gaza. You couldn't separate yourself from your whole neighborhood, your whole extended family. Every time I'm thinking of Gaza, I'm thinking of my family, of my friends, I'm thinking of my auntie that is still trapped in the north. The last message I got from my auntie was in the humanitarian pause that was happened in Gaza. After that, we couldn't reach her. I to contact us and to call us. And once she succeeded at that, she told me that she couldn't find her drugs and medicines alongside with her husband. And she told me that their husband couldn't walk. Literally, he couldn't walk because he suffered from some chronic diseases, and he didn't take her medicines for a while. And imagine that you couldn't find your medicine and you didn't take your medicines for like approximately 2 months. Imagine the severe complications that they will get. Yeah, imagine how severe it is. My heart is, once I remembered my auntie's family. I remember that she was there with her husband and four of her daughters, because she only has daughters. And I remember she tries a lot to save their lives and to save the primary resources, but she failed at that. I remember that she told me that they drank like 2 sips in the day, 2 sips per person, 2 sips of water, of clean water. Can you imagine that in the north? So once I just remember that, I feel really guilty about them, and I'm really acting on them, because I couldn't do anything for them as they stay in the north, and everybody know how hard and painful the situation in the north. And if you just want to do anything for them, you couldn't. Yeah, yeah. It's like, definitely you couldn't do anything for them. I'm really still stuck with Gaza, and it's too heavy inside. I'm still feel guilty about getting out from Gaza. I feel like I just left my extended family and my entire neighborhood, my entire city and country alone. I know that if I were at Gaza, maybe I will get killed. Maybe I will be injured again. Maybe I will lost many of my immediate family. Before leaving Gaza, before 2 days of leaving Gaza, we just lost two members from my cousins. It was heartbreaking. You know that every day in Gaza is a massacre. You know that everything is miserable and so heartbreaking. And I know that I will live with this guilt feeling until this war is ended. But I choose my family first. I choose my health first. Okay, as I told you, I'm physically okay, even if I'm still getting better from my injury, but I'm mentally and emotionally not okay. I'm drained, I'm desperate, and I'm gloomy and blue. And I faced a lot of mental issues. I'm still facing the same hallucinations and nightmares in the night. I'm still struggle with endless nightmares about rockets and about rockets, rebels, drones. I'm still hearing the sound of drones. Can you imagine that? I'm in Egypt, but I'm still hear the sound of the drones. You know how it's annoying that every time, all the time in Gaza, you're supposed to hear the sound of drones. And it was really annoying. You couldn't do anything. You have to sleep with that sound. I'm still hearing the sound of the drones and warplanes. And if something happened, I just tell my family that get ready, we have to evacuate again. I'm just like stuck in the same thing. I can't just be mentally okay.
With her homeland in her heart, Hala questions a path back to something like normalcy.
It's gonna take a lot of time. Even they said that it's gonna take 10 years at least to rebuild Gaza again. So just you imagine that. Okay, I know that I will live with that feeling, that guilty feeling, but I don't know what I supposed to do. But I hope that everything will be get better soon, inshallah. But our house is already gone, is destroyed. So my father from ashes, and it will take, I don't know, but it will take at least from 5 to 10 days. Sorry, 5 to 10 years, not days, years. Because they have to remove the rebels first, and then they have to reconstruct it and rebuild the house again. And it's really a long, it takes a long of time and efforts, as well as we have to rebuild ourselves again from scratch. And imagine how many times just we rebuild ourselves from scratch. So imagine that you start your personal and professional life from scratch, from zero, and you have to find a rental first. You have to find a new home. You have to find a job to deal with your life requirements. So it's really overwhelming, and I'm really overwhelmed with this. Okay, alhamdulillah, I'm survived this war, but I'm still mentally and emotionally not okay, still financially even not okay. Even we afford it at that moment, I know that we couldn't afford it for a long time. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm still have a sparkle in my eye. I'm still have a small dream that my future is gonna be okay, as I faced a lot of struggles, pain, like a lot of terrible and unimaginable moments.
Rebuilding Gaza, not just the broken lives, but the broken city and infrastructure, is a monumental task. There are many different estimates for how long it will take to clean up and make safe the nearly 70% of the buildings in the region that have been damaged or destroyed, leaving behind 37 million tons of debris. One of the first tasks, according to officers from the UN's Mine Action Service, is to clean the unexploded ordnance from the rubble. Removing an estimated 5 to 10,000 unexploded bombs, the expected 10% failure rate from all the munitions dropped on Gaza, could take well over a decade, assuming smooth access for all the necessary equipment. The physical rebuilding of Gaza could take up to 80 years to restore destroyed housing, schools, and public infrastructure. Economic recovery follows a similar trend, with some estimates stating that reaching Gaza's previous 2022 economic position could take until the 2090s, the very end of this century.
I just have one very final question, which actually, this is something I ask every person we interview. Is what is your hope for this interview? Or why did you even agree to do it?
I hope this aggression is ended, and I hope to call for an immediate ceasefire, because we witness a lot of painful experiences, and we still witness that every day, every single moment. We witness a new massacre and a new genocide in Gaza Strip. And I asked to call for an immediate ceasefire. I asked to call for humanitarian access to get inside Gaza with medicine, food, pure water, clean water. And if you can do something without, I really would appreciate that, because you're in the western side of the world, and the whole world is really appreciate the sound or appreciate the voice of western people more than us, the eastern people, or the people who resides in Middle East, even in Palestine, or let's say a small spot, a small geographical spot, which is Gaza Strip. I just compare the situation here with the situation that happened recently. Let's compare just a Palestinian children with any child from outside. Let's take an example, Ukrainian children, for example. How the whole world just to treat Palestinian children, and how the whole world just to treat Ukrainian children. Can you compare? Can you compare that we are having the same human rights? The same human rights, no. And if you look deeply at that they treated Palestinian people as like an exceptional of the whole world. They treated Palestinian people that like people have been trapped in a small cage, and nobody knowing about them, nobody knowing about their rights to live, rights to have an access for health services, life rights to education, health rights to speak up as well. And if you compare between those people, you will witness that we live in just this world. We only have the hope from Allah, and then from other people who still have like a little piece of humanity inside themselves. and we have voices too. I was saying that we are the rest of how the main human of the whole world, and the whole world have to treat us as a human rights says. That's it. Yani, I'm really grateful to share that with you, and I hope my message will reach a lot of people somehow, somewhere. And I hope that they will ask for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and to help people in Gaza who are still under the rocket, who are still under the fire, with nobody helps them and with nobody knowing about them. We have voices and we have to share the truth with the whole world that we are still under that fire, under this military invasion, and we still witness and endure this unbearable, unimaginable moments of this aggression that I refuse totally to call a war, as it's ethnic cleansing of Gazan people. The most of people who got killed or injured are from civilians. So this is my message to the whole world, and thank you so much for listening, for hearing my message and my personal experience. I know that it's really painful and hard, and it's so heartbreaking to hear that from me, from a person who witnessed all of that pain and is still physically okay. And I hope to get well soon, emotionally and mentally. I hope that I hope as soon as possible. But I don't know what I should do regarding that. But I really pleased to share this story with you. Thank you so much.
It is not possible to produce Hala's personal story without also engaging with the broader contexts and language of the war. The term genocide, which Hala uses, is a serious claim that polarizes conversations. In Germany, a close supporter of Israel, people are arrested at protests for using the word in relation to the war. However, in late March of this year, a special rapporteur from the United Nations submitted a report to the UN Human Rights Council stating that they believe Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. You have heard Hala narrate a personal experience of many conditions and acts listed by the rapporteur. This report, along with many other sources, is linked in the show notes. From a distance, the war in Gaza can seem abstract. The numbers are so staggering that they are hard to understand. In 7 months since early October, more than 35,000 people have been killed in Gaza, including 14,500 children, with almost 80,000 wounded. The UN rapporteur states that 70% of recorded deaths have consistently been women and children, with no proof from Israel that the other 30% are combatants. Over 140 journalists have been killed, along with hundreds of medical professionals and other specialists. It is the most destructive and deadly war of the 21st century, with historic comparisons reaching back to World War II. Voices like those of Hala Redwan and other participants in this series help us see the individual experiences and costs of this war and the burdens it places on the innocent bystanders who are caught in the violence. The personal experiences of Omar of episode 1, who was able to leave Gaza early in the war, and Hala, who managed to get out a few months later, are visceral and present, with lasting impacts on their lives. 2 million more people still living in Gaza are subject to the daily violence of the war. As of May 13, 2024, Israeli forces are advancing on the city of Rafah, aiming to destroy what Israeli officials have called the last significant Hamas stronghold in Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry has said that the healthcare system in the Strip will collapse within a few hours due to a lack of fuel needed to power generators. Hala is currently in Egypt with her family. Her father has just been treated for complications resulting from the war. Her sister requires 2 surgeries to recover properly from giving birth under harsh conditions during the evacuation. Hala is looking for scholarships abroad in the hopes of being admitted to a master's degree. Throughout the rest of this year, Gaza Voices will bring forward individual interviews like this one to bring human perspective to the war in Gaza. If this episode touched you in some way, we ask that you pass it along to others who are looking for new context and more information about what's happening in Gaza. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Gaza Voices 24. Our website is gaza-voices.com. Thank you for listening to these Gaza Voices.